Public service announcement comics. Now that's a topic I haven't hit yet, but they're definitely comics that are out there. In fact, one of my very first comics that I read, superhero comics anyway, was a Spider-Man comic that was published by AIM Toothpaste. And of course the story was all focused around dentistry and clean teeth, but as a young kid, I didn't really pick up on that. I just was reading a story about Spider-Man versus the Green Goblin, and it went completely over my head that the Green Goblin kept going after Spider-Man's dentist's new laser. That just did not factor in. To me, it was just a superhero comic. And I think that that's what the publisher and the organization trying to promote something healthy or responsible is aiming for. There have been all sorts of comics like this out there. There have been anti-smoking comics and pro-living with asthma comics and all sorts of things like this. But there was also an infamous Spider-Man comic in 1999 to 2000 called Fastlane. Infamous not because it was anti-marijuana, but because it interrupted every comic book from Marvel that you could get for 4 months straight. Look at this list of comic books that this issue, Fastlane, was inserted into. Yeah, it's a lot. It adds up, all said and done, to something like a circulation over 11 million copies of this thing. You see, in 1998, there was a $5 billion campaign by the White House against drugs. Fine, whatever. They spent $2 million or so making this comic book and printing it, and they inserted 8 pages of it for 4 months in a row to create a 32-page Spider-Man comic against pot. But here's the thing, it interrupted the middle of every comic you were reading, so nobody enjoyed that. And on top of that, I'm pretty sure they got most of the details about pot wrong, just flat out wrong. Now, I personally don't happen to partake, but I live in a state where it's legal. I have plenty of friends who enjoy smoking some pot. I've never seen it as that big a deal. Do what you want. But times were different in 1999. It was still strictly illegal everywhere in the United States. Anyway, I found out that it was printed along with a bunch of other public service announcements in this. It's called Spider-Man Fights Substance Abuse. The mere existence of this book in 1999 makes me wonder, how big a problem could this possibly have been? You know what? Let's ask the man himself. Hey, yo, Spider-Man, was this really that big of a problem?
That's right, Chris. The biggest problem with the United States right now, above everything else, is the marijuana.
So the problem is real.
I tried really hard to keep that stuff off the streets since the 90s, Chris, but nothing seems to work. In fact, it's becoming a really big problem in the superhero community. Like, remember that time Absorbing Man became cocaine, and then everyone snorted the cocaine, and then they could absorb things, and they became Absorbing Man? It's crazy!
Hey, you heard it from the man himself. So Spider-Man, it's really a thing that superheroes need to worry about these days?
The rampant use of marijuana has been affecting a lot of folks recently. In fact, I have a few choice secrets to tell you about the superhero community. Did you know that the man thing is actually just a code word for marijuana? And that the nexus of all realities is secretly just a dispensary in Florida off the interstate? It's a damn shame.
But Spidey, I gotta ask, just for my own benefit, I mean, in a world with people like Dr. Doom and Thanos...
The #1 killer of teens in America in 2016 is saying the word hella. The second worst killer is smoking so much dope that their skin begins to melt off. It's crazy!
Whoa there, buddy! You mean to tell me that you've never partaken of a little bit of the old reefer?
Me personally, I've always tried to stay away from the devil's lettuce. I love a Mary Jane of a different kind. Wait. Mary Jane? Mary Jane. Oh God. I was married to Mary Jane. She was my wife! And then I forgot about it! I sold my marriage to the devil! Oh God, what have I done? Jesus! My daughter is dead!
Well, that does seem tough. If you want to know what he's talking about, check out my video from 2 weeks ago, Spider-Man, One More Day. So without any further ado, let's just get right into it. The story begins with Spider-Man swinging away from one of his enemies, Mysterio, who appears as an absolute giant. But that's because, of course, Mysterio is a master of illusion. Mysterio shouts, "Stand still, Spider-Man! Your demise will be much swifter that way!" And Spider-Man thinks to himself, "Sheesh, how do I get into these things?" Why is Spider-Man thinking that? He obviously knows how he got into this. He fights crime. He goes around looking for trouble like this. Now, if he'd used that as a quip, saying it to Mysterio, fine, maybe it's a setup to some sort of decent punchline. But he's just thinking it to himself. And he doesn't even think of a punchline. Spider-Man thinks to himself a lot in this story. He thinks to himself how Mysterio is a Hollywood special effects guru with an inflated ego and apparently a body to match. When a critic announced that the special effects in the new Zane Whelan flick were the best he'd ever seen, Mysterio went ballistic. He started tearing up theaters, billboards, anything that promoted the movie. Luckily, I know Mysterio's secret. Mysterio is an FX man. He's not really 90 feet tall. Just remember, Spider-Man thought to himself that he knows Mysterio's secret, that Mysterio is really an FX man, okay? Spider-Man thinks that he knows that secret. Remember that for later. Spider-Man continues to think to himself, going, he's using some sort of high-tech holographic gizmo to make everyone think he's a rampaging giant. Gotta trust my spider sense. This isn't real. Just an illusion constructed by an ordinary guy. And he covers up some sort of projector with his webbing and Mysterio just vanishes. I have this little yellow page here so that we can list the mistakes that appear in this issue. Because come on, the people working on this, they're not top tier. I don't think they even care that much about it. And they're starting off with two big mistakes. First of all, Spider-Man's Spidey sense warns him of incoming danger. It's never told him that, say, there's a camera up there that's working as a projector. That's not how his power works. And second, Spider-Man's webbing never works against Mysterio. You may notice that in every panel that Mysterio appears, he's got fog-like substance emanating all around him. Well, that fog also dissolves Spider-Man's webbing. It means that Spider-Man's webbing, one of his most useful tools, has always been useless against Mysterio. That's an important part of what makes Mysterio some sort of a threat. It does not come into play here. So that's two mistakes. Let's note them. Two mistakes thus far. And by the way, if Spider-Man knows Mysterio's secret is that he's an FX guy, why don't you just share that with the police? Help them track him down. That would actually speed a lot of things up for you. We cut to the Daily Bugle, the newspaper where Peter Parker, Spider-Man's alter ego, works part-time as a photographer. And his boss, publisher J. Jonah Jameson, is screaming at him as usual, saying, "Parker, where the blazes have you been? You were supposed to be here a half hour ago. I'm not paying these kids to surf the internet all day." Peter then launches into quite a lot of exposition, telling everybody things that they all know, like that these kids are named Sam Exmoor and Tony Harris, and that they're college interns working on the Daily Bugle's teen supplement On Target, and that J. Jonah Jameson isn't actually paying them. That's a hell of a lot of exposition to get to that sort of joke payoff. Like, I'm not paying these kids to surf the internet all day. Blah, 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 blah. You're not paying them. By the way, check out that Fastlane, the official website. That's a pretty cool web page, huh? I'm surprised Peter Parker didn't explain to J. Jonah Jameson what a computer is and what a keyboard is and how the Fastlane website only has a logo and no actual content. He's Mr. Exposition. When Peter mentions that he's got photos of Spider-Man, Sam gets really excited because it turns out he's a big fan of Spider-Man, but then he brags how he's also a fan of the actor Zane Whelan and shows apparently an ad that's about to go into the newspaper. J. Jonah Jameson goes absolutely ballistic. By the way, notice how every time he yells, there's about 3 spittle bubbles flying out of his mouth. It's kind of disgusting, isn't it? Every time your boss is yelling, he just has spit just like going all over the place. It's a little extreme. Like 1 spit bubble in 1 panel, but 3 panels in a row where you see him yelling and he's got spit just pouring out every time. Gross. What the Sam Hill is this? It's a newspaper ad for Zane Whelan's movie, Mr. Jameson. I'm not running that garbage in my newspaper. And here's where things get really weird. We're going to jump back a couple panels as I explain something. Sam literally says right in front of his boss, Spidey doesn't report to no flat-topped dictator, talking about his boss. He's calling him a flat-topped dictator right to his face. And then a couple panels later, J. Jonah Jameson, the flat-topped dictator himself, replies, "You think this flat-topped dictator doesn't know what this ad is really selling? Look at his t-shirt." Folks, that's a marijuana leaf, and J. Jonah Jameson is not going to put up with it. It is just too serious. It's way too serious. We can't even joke about anything anymore. We're talking about pot. Hey, Spider-Man, any further thoughts on, hey, have you changed something?
Well, anyway, I think I'm a little bit more open-minded now than I was back then. Oh, this? Well, you know, it's the 90s, Chris. I have a different outfit for basically every other day of the week. It's how kids know that I'm hip and cool and my stories aren't secretly stagnating super hard. Oh, by the way, what's that? Oh, I guess it was nothing. You know, it's crazy. Sometimes you think things are a certain way, and then you look again, and it turns out they're actually a completely different way, and everything you know is an elaborate lie.
Jonah says that he won't run the ad, but then Tony points out, and as a newspaper man, you know what pays for your newspaper, right, Mr. Jameson? Jonah is stunned because apparently he has not considered that ads pay for his newspaper. What an experienced publisher. Sam, Tony, and Peter all head off to interview Zane Whelan for the supplement, and as Sam runs to the car, Tony points out, just absolutely out of nowhere, now Sam even carries a bowl in his pocket like Zane, smokes a little grass with his friends, but I'm sure he'll be fine. And check out Peter Parker's reaction there. He looks terrified. He looks like someone told him Skip Westcott was coming to visit.
Wait, did you say Skip Westcott? I don't know. Is he here right now? He's not here, right? Skip, no. My name's
Skip
Westcott.
I just came here to
Call
study.
me Skip. I bet you've never seen magazines like these before, huh, Pete?
This isn't studying. This isn't studying at all.
Hey there, Peter. Is this seat taken?
Oh, God! This is horrible!
Ooh, my bad. Skip Westcott? Yeah, he's a real character from the comics. In Spider-Man Power Pack, Spider-Man noticed that his next-door neighbor was shouting and screaming. Turns out the kid was being molested by his babysitter. To help him, Spider-Man told a story about how he was also molested as a kid. Ooh, yeah, that happened. Tony, Sam, and Peter drive off to interview Zane Whelan, and hey, take a look at what's printed on the side of the Daily Bugle van. That looks suspiciously like a Zane Whelan ad. So J. Jonah Jameson won't approve print ads, but he will approve things like vans, maybe even a billboard on the side of the building. Just then, the van is grabbed by a crane, and it's Mysterio. He's grabbed them because the van had Zane Whelan printed on the side of the van. He shouts, "Once I eliminate those who flaunt the image of Zane Whelan, I will eliminate Whelan himself." Mysterio has set out a massive undertaking for himself. He's going to take out every single sign and billboard for an A-list movie star before he ever goes for the movie star himself. You think that might actually give him time to prepare? You think you might have set your goal just a little too lofty, that you're going to take out any image So it's a total coincidence, by the way, that Mysterio is attacking Peter Parker. Total coincidence. And wouldn't you know it, Sam falls out the driver's doorway. Peter's thinking to himself, how am I going to save Sam and Tony now without revealing that I'm Spider-Man? Sam is falling to his death, but his main concern is not dying, it's my bowl! Whoa! Hey, we've all been there, falling off a cliff, maybe carrying a $2 comic book. We don't want to lose that. I mean, what would life be like if you had to actually replace that thing? So Peter throws his webbing and just assumes that no one can see him do it, and no one does. So he saves Sam, and Peter uses his webbing to yank the crane's controls, safely placing the van back on the road where they screech away. Remember, Sam is still webbed up, but he reaches, and good news! He got his pipe back! Tony chooses this time to start preaching to him, saying, Sam, why do you even need that thing? Why did you have to start smoking weed? Tony's timing is absolutely terrible. They just survived a supervillain attack, and she's choosing that moment to lecture him about his lifestyle choices. On the other hand, Sam is a complete idiot. Who cares if your pipe gets lost, dude? It's a pipe. It's replaceable. It's not even expensive. Let's jump back to this panel where Mysterio was operating the crane, and he says, Hollywood will rue the day it trifled with the greatest special effects wizard in history. Well, so much for Spider-Man knowing Mysterio's big secret. Mysterio's running around yelling it for anyone to hear. So I've got another complaint, and I would consider it a mistake. Now, this is a little on the nitpicky side, but lettering has always been important to me. I think good lettering enhances a story, and bad lettering makes you notice it. And unfortunately, I noticed the lettering in this quite a bit. Specifically, something that this letterer tends to do, where he puts the lettering in right into the crease. See how that goes right into the fold? It makes it hard to read because I constantly have to pull this back along the spine. I rarely can read the letters all the way, and that happens constantly. People don't always notice lettering. I don't love that. I feel like the placement is off. I feel like it's obtrusive. I think if you actually look, even the tails aren't consistent. Usually a letterer has consistent tails. Sometimes they're long, sometimes they're short. They can be thin, fat, curved, straight. Lots of options, but there's a consistency, and these aren't. You'll see that these are straight at first and then curved. All over the place. No consistency. Not a fan of this lettering at all. I'm going to count that as a mistake. Peter, Sam, and Tony make it to the film set and meet Zane Whelan's manager. Now me, if I was attacked, I'd actually report that to the police. That's not the way our heroes do things. They want to go straight to the film set. So, no police calls. Zane Whelan is apparently recording a music video for Fastlane. Now, everything we'd seen so far, the billboards and the signage, led me to believe that Fastlane was an upcoming movie. But now it's a music video that's currently being filmed. I don't think that currently filmed music videos put up posters and billboards, right? So it's just got to be some sort of cross-promotional thing. That means that Zane Whelan, he's a double threat. He's a singer and an actor. This guy does seem pretty cool. I'm starting to see what Sam sees in him. The director calls for action, and I guess it just involves Zane singing and dancing up on a steel I-beam. Let's see if I can sing this song. Life is a rush, don't let it pass you by. Gotta take a hit to make it, or just stand still and die. Follow the white line to the fast lane. Hitch a ride and fly. Zane falls but is caught by his harness. And even though they're on a film set and Zane clearly has a safety harness, Sam and Tony both yell. Do these kids not understand how a film is made, how you're supposed to be quiet on set, and how strange things will happen, like action scenes, sometimes even an explosion? Tony preaches to Sam that Zane is a hypocrite, saying, "Can you believe it? He's up there showing people they can walk on steel girders while high as a kite, and he wears a safety harness?" Sam says, "Well, it's just a music video, Tony. It's cool." But Tony says, Is it really, Sam? Sure, that's what they do on film sets all the time. Zane complains that the last shot wasn't very good, and he throws a little tantrum. I understand that the pot thing is part of Zane's cool, hip image, but does he really wear the same marijuana leaf t-shirt all the time? Gross. In Zane's trailer, Zane talks about how he was glad that he was wearing the safety harness, and his manager says, "Nice touch with the tantrum, Zane." Well, that's enough to set Sam off. He bursts in saying, "I can't believe this. The only thing this reporter is going to write about is that you're one big fake." And he storms off past Tony into the car and begins packing his pipe? Well, I guess Mysterio finished destroying all of the Zane Whelan billboards because he's now broken into Zane's trailer, but Peter quickly changes into Spider-Man to hold him off. And right about now, you may be noticing that Mysterio and Spider-Man have not exchanged so much as a single punch. Government-sponsored public service announcement or not, it's still a superhero comic. You're trying to insert action, but clearly they were not allowed to have physical violence. There is no punching, there's no kicking, there's no nothing. Spider-Man just sort of jumps around and Mysterio just sort of breaks walls and pushes cars around and stuff. There's no actual contact with fighting. And I'd count that in a superhero comic book as a mistake. As long as I'm complaining, I gotta say, I'm not a big fan of the artwork. I'm not counting that as a mistake because you know what? Your mileage may vary. Maybe you don't think it's too bad. It's certainly of the style at the time. 1999, 2000, yeah, this looks like it fits. I just look at it and I see weird decisions. I see decisions like these tangents of Zane standing on the panel border. That's kind of a no-no. I see weird things like faces constantly being covered up or at least half covered up. It's awkward, it's not for me, I'm not a fan. But I'm not saying that it's wrong. Apparently Sam just goes around driving fish bowling in his van. I mean, it is just billowing pot smoke, and he says, "Zane Whelan can go to blazes for all I care. The important thing is what I thought he was like. The way he is in the movies, totally on the edge. That's what's cool. I can get that far out on the edge, even if the real Zane can't." And take a look, I guess he's hallucinating? He's basically having some sort of LSD acid freakout. It doesn't make any sense to me, but you know what? I'm not a drug expert, but I live in a state with a lot of pot stores. Where's my phone? You know what? Give me a minute. I'm going to call Pot Store and talk to an expert and see if this is really something that you can expect to happen if you smoke pot.
Strawberry Depot.
Hi, my name is Chris, and I have a specific marijuana-related question. I was wondering if I could ask you as an expert about it.
Alright.
It's, okay, so this is going to sound a little strange, but I'm reading a Spider-Man comic book that's anti-marijuana, and I don't think what they're describing is right. So I'm going to just describe what I'm seeing on this page, and I was wondering if you could tell me if that's accurate or not.
Alright.
Okay. There's this gentleman named Sam, and he's smoking his pipe, and everything in the city is turning pink. The buildings are sort of bending in towards him, and the billboards are laughing at him. In other words, he's hallucinating wildly. Is that something you can reasonably expect if you were to smoke pot?
No, man, that sounds a lot more like hallucinogenics. We don't deal in that kind of stuff. We're just straight up marijuana.
So this story is not accurately portraying the experience, in your opinion?
I can't imagine that anyone would think that buildings are changing shape with THC, so I would say no.
All right, so that counts as a mistake. Smoking pot is not the same as doing acid. You will not have these weird hallucinations. The writer and artist really should have known about that if this is the whole subject. Another mistake. Spider-Man shoots webbing at Mysterio, but it just passes harmlessly through him. And then suddenly there are multiple Mysterios. But of course Spider-Man knows this is all an illusion. He jumps up and grabs one of the film set's spotlights. He aims it at all of the Mysterios. Only one of them casts a shadow, so Spider-Man webs him up instantly. Mysterio has never seemed weaker. Never. This is pathetic. Meanwhile, Sam drives onto the middle of the Brooklyn Bridge, parks in the middle of it, and then starts walking along the edge saying, "A true rebel lives dangerously all the time." Well, does a rebel just risk other people's lives like a complete jerk? Just driving around like a maniac on the bridge, walking along on the edge for absolutely no reason? You know what? Let's ask our friend at the pot store what he thinks of this scene. You're being such a good sport. I was wondering if I could just ask one follow-up question from this story?
Sure.
All right, so later in the story, this guy Sam says that he's smoked so much pot that he wants to live on the edge, and he walks along. He walks along a really high bridge. He parks his car on like a Manhattan bridge and walks along the outside because he's so high. Is that anything that somebody smoking pot would do?
I will go on the record and let you know that THC is one of the safest things that's available, and it's not going to make you suicidal or take risks like that. Like, it's like mostly just going to make you want to sit and watch a movie and have some snacks and chum it up with some homies.
My last question is, in this story, this guy Sam is falling out of a car. Spider-Man saves him, but on the way to falling, Sam yells, "Oh no, my bowl!" And he's really worried about losing his pipe. About how much would something like that cost?
You can get pipes for just a couple dollars, or they can range to a couple $100 depending on like the glass work and stuff. But yeah, it's probably like a couple dollars that he's going to be losing there, I would guess.
For no reason, Sam decides that he's bored, saying, "Aw, forget it, this isn't much of a kick anyway." And just as he gets back into the van, in this new stop-and-go traffic that he's created, one of the big rigs guns it, hits his van, causes a huge explosion, pours gasoline everywhere, and the van is left teetering on the edge. From there, we cut back to downtown Manhattan, where Spider-Man is hanging out on a Greedo statue for reasons. His spider sense tingles, which means he's actually in danger, and sure enough, his friend the Human Torch has kindly thrown a fireball, but he didn't manage to murder his best friend. Spider-Man's search for Sam is interrupted when the Human Torch just swings by telling him that he was downtown for a big charity gig, and then they both notice smoke coming from the Brooklyn Bridge and fly over to save it. By the way, check out this panel with Spider-Man jumping down. That's obviously a reference to the original 60s cartoon. Not sure why. I guess the artist is just having fun drawing Greedo, referencing the 60s show. I mean, hey, maybe you know that it's your only chance to draw Spider-Man, so you just go for broke. That's fine. Whatever. Have fun. Sam's van finally falls off the bridge, but Spider-Man catches it with his webbing, and now we cut to the last part. Mercifully. And all of a sudden, Spider-Man's webbing breaks. Spider-Man's webbing is incredibly strong. It can easily lift a truck. It's been established that it can do stuff like that, no problem. He can tie up super strong supervillains like the Rhino or Juggernaut and slow them down. Now, people can cut through it if they've got a sharp blade. If they're really strong, they might be able to like remove it, but they can't actually snap it. It has to wait about an hour and then it dissolves. So that's a mistake. Spider-Man's webbing would not break in that situation. Spider-Man defies gravity by falling faster than the van, lands on the van, tears his way into the van, grabs Sam, and then realizes that they've almost hit the ground when, seconds before they hit the ground, Iron Man lifts the van up. Why is Iron Man there, though? Because all the superheroes are there. They were all at a big superhero charity. We've got Iron Man, we've got Storm, we have Thor, She-Hulk, Captain America, the Fantastic Four, and more. I'm not sure all of these superheroes are actually being that superheroic. Let's see. Wolverine has ripped the roof off of one man's car, but his car is clearly not yet on fire, so that seems a little overly destructive, not quite necessary. And then Mr. Fantastic is sliding people right off the bridge. What the hell? Am I looking at that right? Yup. The Fantastic Four is just letting people slide right off the bridge. Okay. Sure. Now we cut to the hospital later where Sam has bandages over his head. Kind of looks like a cartoon mummy up there. Maybe he had a concussion. Or maybe the nurses were just having fun. We have an entire page of Sam just talking about all the lessons he learned. But think about it. Sam was totally disillusioned when he found out that Zane Whelan's public persona did not match his private image, that the two were not the same. But right from the very beginning, Sam was also a fan of Spider-Man, and he doesn't believe all the crap that the Daily Bugle writes about him. So it's like, he shouldn't have been that big an idiot. He should have been able to, of course, understand that Zane Whelan, the actor, is probably not like the characters that he plays. It just doesn't make any sense. They didn't think any of this through. Zane and his manager even learn a lesson, and they stop by to say that they're going to change his image and that they're glad he's okay. Just then, Spider-Man has to leave because Mysterio has escaped from the police. Mysterio is still on the loose at the end. Nothing has changed. This is like some sort of existentialist comic book where Spider-Man cannot change things. Finally, Sam and Tony talk to each other, and Sam says, Spidey's right. Being the editors of On Target for the Bugle really does give us the power to influence people, just like Zane has. Tony adds, but what comes along with that power is... And Sam interrupts, saying, it's responsibility! That's what Spidey was trying to tell us. With great power comes great responsibility. Oh, you didn't earn that. Sam steals Tony's moment, so I think he's a jerk. Wow, this comic book is not very good. So it was tremendously annoying. For 4 months, you had this thing interrupting all your favorite Marvel comics. Very annoying. And then on top of it, it got all sorts of details wrong about, A, how Spider-Man and his powers work. They got things like his webbing and his spider sense wrong. And B, things about pot wrong. So it's like nobody cared. Marvel just took this massive paycheck, hired like the bottom tier talent to pay them the bare minimum, and man, they must have made a huge profit off of this thing. So kudos to Marvel's business managers, I guess? Wow, not a great comic. Stay tuned. Next week, I'll probably have something moderately superior to this because I did not enjoy this one. Until then, thank you very much for your support. Remember to check me out on Patreon. That's how I can afford to have lights and a set and video editing software. I could really use the support, and I really appreciate you watching my videos. So until next week, keep reading comics.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.